Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first this week for our 2 games is 2017's Destiny 2. Bungie's definitive action MMO that takes online multiplayer with first-person shooter gameplay featuring gear and power levels and stretches it across a persistent world with multiple expansions.
Following that is a dark and solemn journey through an already ruined kingdom alongside various spirit companions, 2021's Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Nights.
An interesting theme this week. No, it's not like the Cleveland Major League Baseball team. That's a name to still get used to. But Guardians! Guardians this week. Yes, you play as, your character name is Guardian. You are a Guardian in Destiny. And your knight character that accompanies you in Ender Lilies is also quite a Guardian.
Yeah, that's a very, honestly, very good theme. I like it.
But we're back recording together after a couple weeks, helping each other out with some solo episodes. So it's been a little bit. Maybe we'll figure out if we can still do this whole podcast thing. Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
Well, since last we spoke, I finished my time for now with Theatrhythm. I'm waiting for the DLC to come out now. Well, the first DLC, the Saga DLC already came out, and I've already played it all. But we'll see from there. Theatrhythm's really, really good. It is a frontrunner for Game of the Year already for me. I love it. It's fantastic. And also, I have been trying so hard to finish Fire Emblem Engage. I'm almost there. I'm at chapter 23, and there are apparently 26 chapters. I like it quite a bit. For anybody that knows, my current destructive forces on my army are Etier, paired with Lyn, and Lapis paired with Ike, as well as Citron paired with Celica, which makes all 3 of them kill anything they look at. It's awesome. And other than that, I played Mega Man X, like all the way through.
That's interesting.
That was fun. I would not have beaten that game without the ability to rewind. Because I'm bad at video games. But Mega Man X is very good, and I had a good time with it.
You've also started your new Smasher Pieces game.
We have. We finally finished Fire Emblem, The Blazing Blade, and we started F-Zero GX, and I'm having a good time so far. That game's really good. It's very fast, but really good.
Yeah, I was going to say also very hard. Let's see. I've been mostly enjoying watching my fiance go through Assassin's Creed Valhalla, so that's been fun to see. As far as Persona 5 Strikers goes, I am just before starting the Osaka jail, so jail 6 of 8, and I beat Mom Hid My Game, which I got for free from Amazon Prime Gaming. A dumb little fun quick game on Switch with a surprisingly wholesome ending.
I think I've seen clips of that game, but I don't think I've ever seen the ending.
It's really short, but it's a nice little fun time with some silly humor. And I also beat Hi-Fi Rush from last time I presented on the show about a week ago. That's a fun game. That's a soundtrack that could be in contention this year for Best of 2023. I'm not going to say definitely. It's going to be a really good year for game music if all things are going to plan out the way that they are, but that could be a contender.
I'm planning on playing the game because it is on Game Pass. I just don't know when I'm going to get around to it. I keep running out of hard drive space and having to uninstall stuff, including when Hi-Fi Rush was installed. So, eventually.
In the meantime, let's talk about some composer follow-up news. Got a few headlines from what's been happening in the game industry and how it relates to composers that we've talked about on the show. We had the DICE Awards happen, and it played pretty much the same as far as the Game Awards went, as far as the big awards go. So God of War Ragnarok won the music composition category, and Elden Ring won Game of the Year, so seems to be the form there. For what it's worth, also like the Game Awards, Horizon Forbidden West, the game that I talked about last week on the show, was nominated 7 times, I mentioned, and we gotta wait for the DICE Awards. Yeah, it also did not win anything, just like at the Game Awards, so that's unfortunate.
I was actually not aware of the DICE Awards. It's been a very busy couple weeks. So I was not really aware the DICE Awards had happened, but it's good to, Elden Ring winning Game of the Year even there. That's surprising, and, I mean, good. Elden Ring's good. It's kind of interesting that, it went the same as the Game Awards. That's bizarre, actually. I don't know why it feels bizarre, but it feels weird. Meanwhile, speaking of Game Pass, Hi-Fi Rush is not the only thing you can play on it, because Atomic Heart, which has music by Mick Gordon, as well as Soul Hackers 2, which has music by the people over at Monaka, including Keiichi Okabe, and was part of our Best of 2022 Top 10, are out on Game Pass now, which means I can effectively not pay any extra to go play a game I've been told is not good. Looking forward to it. Unfortunately, though, this comes at a price, as Octopath Traveler, which we talked about in episode 72, and Dragon Ball FighterZ, which we talked about in episode 27, have now left Game Pass. Rest in peace, both of them.
It gives as it takes away. There was also a State of Play. We were hoping to cover that, but not really anything interesting happening. Maybe we'll get a RE4 demo soon. But also recently, Pokemon Presents had their digital presentation to talk about the things going on with Pokemon during Pokemon Day. And Pokemon Sleep.
Yeah!
Re-revealed for the first time after 4 years, which is crazy.
Hype. Yeah, baby. I'm ready to sleep.
I don't know how it tracks sleep when it's just your phone app that you have just sitting and plugged in. Not sure how it does that. We'll have to see. It's supposedly coming out in summer of 2023 with a Pokewalker new accessory. Oh my gosh, what was it? The Pokemon Go Plus device? Only Nintendo. Only Nintendo would name things so ridiculously. Also, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is getting new DLC, as we would have expected. Kind of like what happened with Sword and Shield. They got a 2-parter DLC. So, the Hidden Treasure of Area Zero gets 2 parts, releasing in fall and winter of 2023. So, more cool Pokemon music, hopefully.
I'm looking forward to that. I've seen some of the character designs of what look to be the rivals. They look goofy, and I love them dearly. And I'm looking forward to catching more robots and seeing more cave animals.
Let's talk about the first game this week. I don't know what I was thinking when I'm like, let's talk about Destiny 2. Let's put it on Lightfall week. I want to learn more about Destiny 2 and what has happened with that game over the years and years, because Destiny 2 released on September 6th, 2017 for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, with a PC version arriving on October 24th, 2017. It had a Google Stadia version. Remember when that was a thing?
I try not to.
And that launched in November 2019. There's a version for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X that supported new gen consoles, and that was on December 8th, 2020. The game is currently free to play with content up to a certain point, and then paid content releases every year or two. We'll talk more about how that all happens, but one of those big paid content is coming out today as of time of episode release, and Destiny 2 Lightfall launches today on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. It is the 7th expansion, and it represents the 6th year of extended content for Destiny 2. The game is developed by Bungie, and it was originally published by Activision until Bungie got the publishing rights back after their original contract with Activision for Destiny. Well, that expired in 2019. Like the original 2014 Destiny and its subsequent expansions, Destiny 2 is a first-person shooter that features a multiplayer shared world environment with elements of role-playing games. Basically, I think the way you should think of Destiny and Destiny 2 is trying to be the World of Warcraft of first-person shooters. It wants to be an MMO, a massively multiplayer online game, but it has a different core genre and gameplay hook. Instead of top-down adventuring and role-playing, it's first-person shooter, baby. In fact, Bungie brands the game today as the definitive action MMO. Of course, you can play story mode missions by yourself, but there are lots of other possibilities once online-only multiplayer happens. These include player versus environment or PvE game types, such as playing through the story with up to 3 other players, 3-player strikes and dungeons, and 6-player raids, as well as your usual player versus player or PvP game types. You're basically your kind of Halo-like multiplayer in a way. You can kind of do that too. A free roam patrol mode is also available for each in-game destination, which features public events, and this emphasizes exploration of the destinations as well as interactions with non-player characters. Basically, choose your class. You have 3. You have the Warlock, which is the mob control and healer type. You have the Hunter, which is your marksman, and then Titan, which is a tank. You can also choose your species, whether you're human, awoken, basically an evolved human descendant with blue-gray skin, or an exo, a humanoid machine. So yeah, pick your class, pick your species, and away you go. You'll get a subclass in the meantime once you start playing enough. Basically, because Destiny 2 has years of support, many years of support, with new additional content that gets added with each expansion, like a whole new soundtrack for each expansion. When we talk about the soundtrack for Destiny 2 and the story and the development, it's all going to be limited to the initial release of Destiny 2, which is now known as a campaign called The Red War.
Essentially, the way we do FF14.
Right.
Basically.
Yeah. It's like, we're going to talk about it from the beginning. If we ever want to get back to a future expansion with its soundtrack, we can do that. But let's talk about the original with the Red War. Oh, here's a problem, though. Destiny 2, the Red War, is technically not accessible anymore because it is in the Destiny Content Vault. We'll talk about that some more later. But basically, the story of the beginning of Destiny 2, 1 year after the Siva crisis, which took place in The Rise of Iron, which was the last expansion in the original Destiny, Cabal forces of the Red Legion launch an aerial assault on the last city, which is basically the final bastion of humanity on Earth. And this destroys the main portion of the Tower, the headquarters of the Guardians. The player's Guardian and their mechanical ghost companion respond by assisting the Vanguard in assaulting the Red Legion command ship. As they confront the Red Legion's commander, Dominus Gall, his forces attach a device to the Traveler. If you're familiar with any Destiny iconography, the Traveler is this big white sphere in space. And this device drains the Traveler of the light, which is the power used by the Guardians. As a result of this, the Guardian loses their powers and is nearly killed by Gall. Waking 2 days after the attack, the Guardian finds a haven known as The Farm in the European Dead Zone, or EDZ, with the assistance of Soraya Hawthorne, a non-Guardian human from the outskirts of the last city. The Guardian is then urged by Commander Zavala to travel across the Sol system to find Ikora Rey and Cade 6 to assist in a counterattack to retake the last city. Big question, Can the Guardian defeat Dominus Gaul? Or at least it was the big question in the early years of Destiny 2. Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Destiny 2?
I have never touched Destiny. It's not really my kind of game. I don't play a lot of multiplayer stuff in general, and I also don't play a lot of first-person shooters, to be perfectly honest. So when you slap those two together, I don't know. I don't have any desire to play it. I think the only MMO I've ever played and kind of gotten sucked into, but then still didn't play very long, was FF14. Yeah, I know very little about Destiny, mostly because I've never touched either of them.
And that's fair. I tried a little bit of Destiny 2 because when I decided to buy a PlayStation 4 Pro, I liked the idea of having a white console. And a white PlayStation 4 Pro meant it was the Destiny 2 bundle that made the console white, made the controller white. And so that was a piece of software that came bundled in with that PS4 Pro. Tried it for a little bit, didn't get on too well with it. That's not too surprising. My Halo experience has been kind of mixed, and when you're getting the team from Bungie, the Halo team, basically being their next project, where it's not exactly Halo. They tried to do some new things, but the DNA and the roots are there. So, didn't get on too well with that, especially when I didn't have a squad or a team to play with. There's only so much you can do, I suppose, in that game just by yourself. But I know the soundtrack's really good. It's a daunting game to look at right now, especially when you talk about all the expansions that have come out since and all of the work that Bungie have done to really make Destiny, especially Destiny 2, what it is. And it was interesting to learn about the development of the game, because you could talk about the struggles that the original Destiny had, right? But based on the original plans for how Activision wanted to release Destiny with Bungie, the team decided they wanted to release new disc-based sequels every other year until 2019, with large downloadable expansions in between. And so a sequel to Destiny was originally planned for a September 2016 release. Makes sense with the original 2014 release. And Bungie confirmed on February 11th, 2016, that a full sequel would release in 2017. Now, Bungie had said that players' characters and progression would carry over from Destiny into future releases. However, this turned out to only be half true. Characters and progression did carry over into Destiny's expansions, but for the sequel, only the player characters' physical appearance carried over if they had reached level 20 and completed the Black Garden quest in the original game. As to why the progression and the items did not carry over, Bungie said, quote, "We believe this is the best path forward. It allows us to introduce the major advancements and improvements that all of us expect from a sequel, ensuring that it will be the best game we can create, unencumbered by the past." So, between a rock and a hard place there. But Bungie did award veteran players in Destiny 2 with in-game emblems that acknowledged their accomplishments in the original Destiny. Destiny 2 had 4K support on PC, as well as having 4K support on the PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X, which both launched in late 2017. Those console versions were capped at 30 frames per second. 60 FPS would have to wait until the PS5 and Xbox Series versions. While the PC version had an uncapped frame rate, full mouse and keyboard support, text chat, an adjustable field of view, and 21:9 monitor support, it was exclusive to Blizzard Entertainment's Battle.net service at the time of its launch.
Woo!
Though once the self-publishing deal with Bungie took over, the game transitioned to Steam. And then crossplay was announced for all platforms, and that was added in late 2021, so they're on that board at least. The original release of the game reviewed well, with a Metacritic average of 87 on Xbox One, 85 on PS4, and 83 on PC. Praise was focused on its improvements, particularly with regards to the initial story, as well as the gameplay, visuals, exploration focus, multiplayer, and the public events. Though reviews were divided on the recategorization of weapons, the Leviathan raid, the new modes, and mostly people feeling that the game felt like Destiny 1.5 at launch. Destiny 2 was the second highest grossing console game of 2017 in North America. This was behind Call of Duty World War II. Now, specific sales numbers weren't really given, but the Destiny 2 player base today is estimated at around shy of 40 million players, so quite a lot of people playing Destiny. 2017 was a tough year for awards, though, if you're talking about what it earned as far as the big shows go. It was nominated 6 times at the Game Awards, including for Best Score in Music, but it didn't win anything. It was nominated for Audio Achievement at the BAFTAs, and it was nominated 3 times at the DICE Awards, including for Outstanding Achievement in Sound Design, but it did not win anything. One of its biggest awards is that it won Best Community Support at the Game Awards 2019, and this was for the Forsaken expansion. It's also been nominated at the other big award shows in similar categories for ongoing game, community support, things like that in subsequent years. So it's been recognized for that, not necessarily winning everything, but Destiny 2 has a long history since its launch. So let's break it down year by year and generally what happened. Year 1, you had the expansions that came out that year. So there was Curse of Osiris in December 2017, followed by Warmind in May 2018. Then you had year 2 of the game, and this was Destiny 2 Forsaken in September 2018. Basically, each year expansion from here on out also gets 4 seasons of content that rolls out about every 12 weeks or so, because, you also have a monetized annual pass, because that's part of the game industry, especially at this time. Make that season pass money, baby!
Woo!
In year 3, you had Shadowkeep, which was the first standalone release of the game that you could just buy that on its own and be totally fine. And that was in October 2019. Also in October 2019, Destiny New Light released. And this was a free version of the game that just included the year 1 content of the game. In November 2020, year 4 began with Destiny 2 Beyond Light. This game is actually currently available for February 2023 PlayStation Plus Essential members. So if you're listening today, go get it quick if you have PS Plus Essential, because those games are rolling over very soon. And if you just want to add it to your library, you probably already have. No big deal. So check that out. But something unusual happened with this installment of Beyond Light, because older content for Destiny 2 was phased out into the Destiny Content Vault, or the DCV. Much like the Disney Vault, once it goes back there, Disney can decide to pull something out, just like Bungie can decide to pull content out from the Destiny Vault, but it's back there. It's locked. You cannot access it. And so in November 2020 with Beyond Light, all of year 1's content and almost all of year 2's, excluding the Forsaken campaign, so all of year 2's season content, boom, gone into the vaults. For year 5, it's Destiny 2 The Witch Queen, and that launched in February 2022. The Forsaken campaign at this point went into the DCV, so early 2022, the first 2 years of Destiny 2, bye-bye. Bungie had said before that using the Destiny Content Vault was a way to rework content, and it was an alternative to developing a wholly new Destiny 3 game. However, by August of 2022, Bungie stated that they had improved the back-end technology behind Destiny 2, so that they will no longer vault expansion content. So that's good for them. By the sound of it, it sounded like it was getting way too unruly with data size on hard drives and things like that and what they were expecting players to manage, but I guess they must have fixed all of that. And so for Year 6, Destiny 2 Lightfall releases today, as of time of episode release. And since these are all standalones, if this sounds interesting to you to play a first-person shooter MMO, they're considered fine points to jump in. So jump in with Lightfall. Though, next year, Year 7 of content will be called The Final Shape, releasing at some point in 2024. And this will close out the first saga of Destiny, which I guess they call the Light and Darkness saga, before moving on to a whole new saga for the franchise. Also, the legacy of Destiny 2 involves Sony purchasing Bungie in January 2022 for $3.6 billion. This really didn't seem like a move to change the platform availability of the game or lock up any exclusivity, but it was more to help retain Bungie talent, continue development of the game, and also help them grow a multimedia Destiny universe. So who knows if a TV show or a movie is down the line at some point.
I'm so tired. I'm so tired of everything having to be a multimedia thing. Just make a video game. Just make a game.
But that wouldn't be the capitalism way with making all the money. The composer we'll talk about this week for Destiny 2 is Skye Lewin. And Skye Lewin did a really good job of hiding his birth and location data from the internet. I'll give him that. We don't come across that all that often when looking up composers. I'm going to guess maybe he's based out of Washington State if he works on site at Bungie. But who knows with remote work these days? Anything is possible. Skye Lewin identifies himself as a musician, composer, songwriter, record producer, and music editor. Currently, he is an audio director and composer at Bungie. As far as how he got started in music, he says, quote, "Like many musicians, I started out playing in bands. From there, I started writing music and developed an appreciation for recording and producing music as well." He attended the Berklee College of Music in Boston, and he's won 4 Emmys for sound editing on CSI Miami and the Fargo TV show. When he talks about music editing, he says, quote, "Music editing is like putting together a puzzle. You have a great song that you get to take apart and put back together in a new way to make it flow with the picture. It's great because while it isn't always obvious, there's always a solution." In his spare time, Skye Lewin is the co-founder of the record label and music production company Sound Chemistry. So if you listened to last week's episode with Alexa Lozovchuk, with a similar kind of background with played in bands, also has a music production company. I'm getting a lot of flashbacks from research I was doing just a week ago. Very interesting. It looks like Skye Lewin used to be on Twitter at SKYELEWIN. Had a link on his website and all, but the account no longer seems to be there. So maybe he had enough of Muskrat's nonsense.
Possibly. I can't imagine why somebody would want to leave Twitter. It's so fun.
Skye Lewin's discography. He started at Bungie with additional percussion performances on Halo Reach. And then he's been big working on Destiny and Destiny 2. He was a music editor on TV shows like Fargo in 2014, Banshee, CSI Miami, and his original Union work of Entourage. Some films that he was a music editor on include The Karate Kid, Runner Runner, and Annabelle. The music of Destiny 2 involves the work of several composers, and so the original score to the original Destiny 2 was composed by Michael Salvatore, who we talked about him on episode 128 of Original Soundchat for his work on Halo 3. He's one of the 2 big Halo composers, along with Marty O'Donnell. There's a whole story with the original Destiny of a split and a schism there, so Michael Salvatore continues to be seemingly the lead composer there, but also Skye Lewin has a big hand in composition, as well as C. Paul Johnson, Rotem Moav, and Peter Schlosser. When creating the music, the composers stated that their goal with it was to, quote, capture the somber spirit of a civilization confronting immense tragedy. Also to, quote, inspire bravery in the hearts of our heroes as they stand together and fight to reclaim all that they hold dear. And that sounds like a pretty good summation of the lows and the highs of the original Destiny 2, the Red War campaign. So let's dig into that original soundtrack and pick out some critical tracks. I've got 5 critical tracks here for Destiny 2. And let's start off with this first one. This one's got to be here. This is Inner Light. An iconic song in the original Destiny 2 for sure, composed by Michael Salvatori, Skye Lewin, and Rotem Moav. This plays at the start screen during year 1 of Destiny 2. And so, especially when you're trying to load into the world, you need a pretty hype song that'll pick you up and represent the adventure that you are about to either go on or continue. It's a piece that's composed mostly of strings and brass, but then you get a choir and some percussion acting as accompaniment, especially in that big swell that you hear in the clip. And that's, I feel like, the big moment that everyone points out with this song. But it's nice to hear like the Halo roots. And it might not be the last time we point that out. It's an easy comparison to make, especially with Michael Salvatori. But yeah, you definitely hear it here where it's like, oh, this kind of sounds like Halo. And then, Destiny 2 really kicks in with this piece and this part of the piece especially to really sound triumphant. And you're about to reclaim the last city, reclaim the light as the Guardian. And wow, this one really stands out, especially for sounding so momentous.
I don't know what. Maybe it's just because Theatrhythm has my brain just in a headlock. It reminds me of some of the stuff I heard from like Final Fantasy 12, maybe? Nah, maybe not 12, but it certainly sounds sort of Final Fantasy-ish, but it's got its own sort of flair to it. I do agree. I like the choir there sort of reflecting the Halo roots of the company making it. I think that's kind of neat. I genuinely wonder if that's on purpose. I have no idea. But yeah, it's cool. This is a cool piece.
Number 2 on the 5 critical tracks for Destiny 2. This one caught my ear, and it's called Forge Ahead. Just a nice syncopated rhythm and good accompaniment going throughout this one. This is composed by Michael Salvatori, Skye Lewin, and C. Paul Johnson. It can be heard while sitting idle in orbit, and it plays throughout the mission 1AU, most notably when the player jumps into the tube to get closer to the Almighty's core. And even fans in the comments on YouTube versions of this song definitely note that moment. It's neat to see them play. It's like, oh yeah, like this playing along that moment specifically was like a crowning moment of awesome. Felt really cool. Just a memorable moment. And you love moments like that when it pairs the gameplay with the music so well. Something like I wish I could have experienced that because the music on its own sounds great, especially when it kind of dips back at the end of the clip to kind of a more underscore going there, but still with a sense of rhythm and purpose.
Yeah, I was going to say, just based on the clip, suppose when you're idling in space? The second one makes a lot more sense, but like...
Maybe earlier in the piece. I don't know. It's hard to say. You definitely get a lot of variation in these longer tracks on the soundtrack for sure.
But yeah, it's very cool. I can see why it caught your ear. All I can think about is Final Fantasy. I don't know why. It doesn't even sound that Final Fantasy-like. What has Theatrhythm done to me?
I mean, it's not a bad thing to get compared to for a Final Fantasy soundtrack. That's for sure. Another piece that I feel like is pretty critical on the Destiny 2 soundtrack is this one here, number 3. This one is called Journey. This track is composed by Michael Salvatore and Skye Lewin. And I don't know if you know this, Joe, or this hits with you, but maybe when you're listening to a soundtrack on YouTube and you're flipping through the tracks and one has like way more views on it than like every other track, maybe it's got to be a critical track. I'm just saying, maybe it resonates with fans and they want to keep hearing it. So this one features the Kronos Quartet as far as instruments that play. Definitely at the start of the piece, carrying this da 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 da. Have that as a smaller kind of string quartet there. It really highlights their cello and viola as a duet. But then here towards the end of the piece, this orchestration just gets massive, just so big and much more dramatic, and really the climax of the piece, and just sounds incredible, honestly. It plays heavily throughout the mission Adieu, and also at the beginning of Chosen. So I believe it's kind of at the long run up to Dominus Gaul. Basically, like, try and stop me. You're feeling awesome as a Guardian here, whether it's you alone or with your team. Big moments that Guardians and Destiny players remember, certainly along with this song.
This definitely feels like a big moment. I think this might be my favorite on the Critical 5 of the clips I've heard. Big is a very good way to put it. I don't know how else to describe it other than it feels big. Though at the very beginning, not in the clip, like the very beginning of the piece, for some reason, so when I hear Journey, obviously my brain goes to the game. Journey.
Of course.
And the beginning, just hearing the first couple notes before going to where the clip starts is like, is this just Journey?
You got the cello.
It's right there. And I found that funny, at least.
Number 4 on the Critical 5. Let's get to that final boss, the piece that plays in the final showdown. Of course, number 4 here on the Critical 5 for Destiny 2. This is Dominus Gaul. Makes sense for a track called Dominus Gaul, that it plays during the fight with Dominus Gaul on the mission Chosen. It's composed by Michael Salvatore, Skye Lewin, and C. Paul Johnson. And I feel like this piece, especially out of all the other ones we've played so far, this one is definitely Halo-like. Granted, earlier in the piece, when you're having the big final showdown, it's darker for sure. You gotta have that final boss confrontation. But this part in the clip is more the, you're doing it, you're winning, the light is overcoming and seizing the day. So it's definitely triumphant and has that feeling to it. But yeah, this one I listened and it's like, oh, that's just like the big highs in Halo, baby. And that's great, honestly, to kind of carry that forward in a different direction.
It's good when I can hear a song, specifically the clip, and be able to tell exactly when in the boss it takes place, even though I don't know what the boss is, don't know what they look like, and have never seen gameplay of that boss. But yeah, you could tell immediately that this is the big triumph. It's sort of like you've almost done it, victory lap sort of thing.
Yeah.
It sounds really good. It's very, very hype.
But we'll wrap up the 5 critical tracks for Destiny 2 with the last track on the soundtrack, and that is The Last City. This piece is composed by Michael Salvatore and Skye Lewin, and from what I could gather, this is the hub world music that plays in The Last City in the post-game. So kind of when you're exploring things after you've completed the campaign, and wow, just a gorgeous piece. I mean, the piece starts with this da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, kind of little leitmotif going there, but wow, the swell here shown in the clip, I mean, that's just gorgeous. That's like stop, stare, take in your environment in the hub world. Just that kind of beauty. And I feel like it's a perfect way to kind of wrap things up, especially in the first couple of years of Destiny content when players may have heard this piece quite a lot.
I really dig the use of the harp. I think it sounds very, very good. You don't hear that in this kind of game very often. Harp is usually reserved for fantasy games, so hearing it in a sci-fi game is odd, but it fits. This piece is very, very pretty. I agree.
Got a couple tracks on the cutting room floor. I have 2 here, and the first of these is called Lost Light. This one is again composed by Michael Salvatore and Skye Lewin, and this also features the Kronos Quartet once again. Specifically for this string quartet arrangement, it highlights their violins and first viola. And it's nice to hear this one as a kind of counterpoint to the big epic moments, the feeling powerful and guardian-like. Because at this moment in the game, you've temporarily lost your light powers after your initial confrontation with Gaul, and your ghost is telling you that, hey, like if you die, I can't revive you with the light. So like we got to really figure out what's going on. How can we restore your light powers at least until we go figure out how to take down the Red Legion? And so this really shows that powerlessness and how you got to be very careful in this piece. And I think that's done really nicely with a great depth and effect.
Yeah, this is a very solemn, low-key piece, which is a tone that people should probably get very used to for the second half of this episode. And it's very, very pretty. I have the favorite on the Critical 5, but honestly, I think this might be the favorite on the whole thing, for me personally.
Yeah, it definitely has a lot of emotion to it. But I'll hit you with one more triumphant sounding piece, and that'll be the other one here on the cutting room floor. And this is What We Fight For. A lot of cool stuff going on with this piece. The brass instruments, the triple tonguing on the trumpets, the choir coming in and hitting. Oh, it's just so good here. This is composed by Michael Salvatore, Skye Lewin, Rotem Moav, and C. Paul Johnson. And it was primarily used as the musical backing in the second cinematic trailer for the game, but it does also show up in some other game modes. Another piece that really caught my ear, doesn't seem to have a prominent part in the game, but one where players are noting, and like when you're playing this game mode and it pops in, ooh, it hits nice. And with some of the big tonal shifts in this piece, I can definitely feel why that'd be very memorable.
Okay, that's why I feel like I've heard it before. It was in the trailer. Okay. Because the first thing I thought when the piece started was like, have I heard this song before? Why does this sound familiar? That would explain it. Yeah, I especially like the vocals in this piece. I think they are used very well and they sound very cool. So that's definitely what stands out to me in here.
Really gives a prominence to it for sure. What will I never forget about Destiny 2? How long it's going. The fact that Bungie got to exercise their own control over it, freed it from Activision's grasp. It's really impressive what they've continued to build. It makes me wonder, like when they talk about what the next saga of Destiny is, how will that happen, a year or so from now? I mean, that's wild to think about. But yeah, it's a new Destiny season, and I have a couple Guardians that I follow on Twitter, friends of mine, who are very excited for it. So I'm happy for them. And it was important for me, I think, to at least learn about how is Destiny 2 structured, what's going on here, because I tried it and it didn't stick with me, but it's a continuing prominent focal point in the game industry. Every year, every couple years, it's a new expansion. It's a new, basically, era of the MMO in a way.
I will probably never play Destiny 2. I'm sorry, Bungie. It's just not my thing. I have zero interest. Music's pretty good, though, so there you go.
It does stand out on the soundtrack front for sure. But yeah, if an MMO is not your thing, then it's not your thing. To transition to our next game, I'd like to highlight a fan cover, whether it's on YouTube, OC Remix, wherever. It's been a while since we've talked about a Little V Mills piece, and while I'm looking up a Destiny 2 cover, he did a take on Journey, that big, long piece that's the longest on the original Destiny 2 soundtrack. And of course, Little V Mills puts a metal spin on it, and it sounds just so good. So please enjoy, and we'll be right back.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed the high energy of that transition piece. It's time for me to take all of that energy away from you, because we are talking about Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Nights, which released on June 22nd, 2021 for PC and Switch, then came out June 29th for Xbox One and Series X and S, as well as July 20th for PlayStation 4. It was developed by AdGlobe and Livewire and published by Binary Haze Interactive. So what is Ender Lilies? It is a Metroidvania where the player takes control of a young girl named Lily, who awakens with no memories in the ruined kingdom of Land's End, and she's greeted by the spirit of a knight who has been bound to her in order to serve as her protector.
Or guardian.
Or guardian. Let's go with guardian. Fits with the theme. So what happened to Land's End? Well, it fell victim to a force known as the Blight, which, as far as names go, doesn't get much more generic than that, but whatever, it's fine. This blight either killed anybody it came in contact with or drove them insane and turned them into vicious monsters. Lily herself is a being known as a white priestess, and as such, she has the ability to purify others of the blight by absorbing it into herself. And as she's merely a child, she can't really fight. She's defenseless on her own. But she can collect various spirits throughout her journey, including the knight that serves as her guardian, that can help her in terms of both traversal and combat. Basically, I described this game to Matt when we did a couple streams of it at one point. If you'll remember the JoJo episode, it is basically what if you played as a little girl who had a stand, and the stand did all the fighting. It's basically that. The knight does all the fighting, or whatever, like, other spirits you can equip and all that. And it's kind of weird, but it works super well. So together, Lily and her knight must travel through Land's End to learn what happened to the kingdom and potentially find a way to end the blight before it is able to do any more damage to the world. However, there is no saving this world. It's already too late for that. Everybody is already either dead or a monster. Overall, though, Ender Lilies, standard Metroidvania. You got an open map. You can open up more as you beat bosses and gain the new traversal abilities, like there's a ground smash, there's a wall climb, and you can gain new spirits either by defeating mini-bosses throughout the map or defeating the main boss of an area, after which they become something you can use, both in combat or in case of main bosses in traversal and combat. She can only have 6 spirits equipped for combat at a time, though they're split between 2 sets of 3 that must be switched between. So basically, you have 3, and you can hit a button to switch to your other set of 3. But those are the only 2 sets you get. And you gotta change in the pause menu and everything to equip others, obviously. And outside of the various different combat spirits, as well as the ability to level up, which it takes from the more Vania side of the Castlevania Metroidvania thing, Ender Lilies is kind of really similar to Hollow Knight. It is, in a lot of ways, what if Hollow Knight was about a little girl in Dark Souls? But it's very, very Hollow Knight. You can definitely see the inspirations 100%. You heal using prayers that require you to stand still for a brief period of time and do a charging animation. Essentially exactly the same as Soul Vessels and Soul in Hollow Knight. You can supplement your stats and abilities by equipping relics, of which you only have a certain amount of slots that you could use. Pretty much the same as pins in Hollow Knight. And you even save and heal on benches and can warp between benches. So, like, very, very Hollow Knight. But that's not a terrible thing. It takes the good parts from Hollow Knight, I think. So the questions become, can you learn the truth of what happened in Land's End? Is Lily truly the last surviving white priestess, or perhaps even the last surviving person in the kingdom? And can she survive the journey with her loyal knight's protection? So here's where I'll ask, what are your experiences with Ender Lilies?
I only knew of this game because you brought it up in our Best of 2021 episode. I think it was an honorable mention there, but had not heard of it before, have not heard of it since. It's interesting that there's the comparison to Hollow Knight, a game that I tried and found difficult because of the what if Metroidvania but Dark Souls hard. But yeah, it's interesting to kind of see where it takes its inspirations from, and I'm looking forward to learning about the game and the music.
I will say it is a lot easier than Hollow Knight.
Oh, well, that's good.
Mostly because you can level up. You can level grind in this game and make yourself stronger, so that helps, I guess. For me, I played it in 2021 because it got a pretty good review by the person who did it on NWR, and the person who reviewed it tends to review a lot of games that I would like, and so hearing that he gives a game a high score usually puts it on my radar, because we have very similar tastes, it seems. And I enjoyed it. I actually 100%ed it. I got the true ending and everything. The final boss is extremely hard. That one is difficult. But, I don't know, I enjoyed it a lot. I think the atmosphere is fantastic. Combat feels nice. Unfortunately, at some point you get an air dash, which I say unfortunately because before that, when you do your dodge, Lily just sort of flops onto the ground. And it looks really funny, and I really like it. And then you get an air dash, and suddenly she looks cool now or something. But yeah, the atmosphere, the world, a bunch of stuff. It's not something that would have blown anybody away, and to be perfectly honest, a lot of the lore and stuff is very, we have Dark Souls at home. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. If you're going to copy something, you might as well copy something good. I think overall it works. And the way it does combat, I think, is very unique. I don't think I've ever played a game that feels quite like it. With fighting with spirits instead of the character you're actually controlling. It's neat. I definitely recommend it to folks who like Metroidvanias. Unfortunately, I could not find a huge amount of information on its development, and by that I mean basically nothing. Which is unfortunate. Both Livewire and AdGlobe are apparently studios based in Shibuya, which I don't think I would have pegged this for a Japanese game, but that just makes it even more interesting, I think. I tried to look into what these companies had done before this. AdGlobe was apparently founded in 2010, but I had a huge amount of trouble finding exactly what games they have been involved with. Their websites and Twitter tend to only talk about Ender Lilies and a 2023 game called Redemption Reapers. But Moby Games, for some reason, and only Moby Games, lists them as having done some work on Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, as well as new Pokemon Snap. Only source that said that anywhere. So, Livewire was a bit easier to find. They're credited previously for work on games like Radiant Silvergun, Mishihime-sama, Espgaluda 2, Dondonpachi Resurrection, Ender Lilies, which is the first game on this list I've heard of. Well, I've heard of Radiant Silvergun, but I've never played it. But most recently, they were the developers behind Square Enix's farming sim / RPG hybrid Harvestella.
Ah.
So, I only recently learned that was the Ender Lilies people. Like, a couple weeks ago. I never would have pegged it for that. Which, I want to play Harvestella. I've heard it's pretty good, honestly. Sounds like my kind of game. Like I said, I can't really find any information on the game's development. I did find that it was originally supposed to release in December of 2020, and then it got delayed to summer of 2021. But it did release in early access with 3 of the 8 areas complete on January 21st, 2021. And it reviewed very well when it came out. The highest rated version is on Xbox at 88. The lowest rated version is Switch at 84, and then PC and PS4 both sit at 86. Praise was often given to the game's art style, which was often compared to that of Vanillaware, which I could see it. It is not quite Vanillaware, but you can see the comparison.
Yeah, that's a fair comp point. Okay.
As well as its combat mechanics that feel, again, very similar to games like Hollow Knight. It also received praise for its soundtrack, which apparently a lot of people claimed that they heard the soundtrack first, and that's what convinced them to buy the game in the first place, with a lot of them having been won over simply by the music in trailers. And as of March 2022, the game had officially sold over 600,000 copies worldwide, but when I was looking at their Twitter, as of February 9th, Ender Lilies has officially sold over 1 million copies worldwide.
Wow, good for them.
So that is cool. So, for the composer, technically we're talking about 2 people, but we're kind of talking about a musical group, but we're talking about 2 people. The musical group is called Mili, M-I-L-I. It is a musical group that includes the members Yamato Kasai, Cassie Wei, Yukihito Mitomo, Shoto Yoshida, and Ao Fujimori, but we're going to focus on Yamato Kasai and Cassie Wei, as they are the ones credited specifically as the composers on this game. And unfortunately, though, I could not find a huge amount on them, but I did find the minimum amount of information, which is cool. Yamato Kasai was born on October 10th, 1986 in Japan, and you can follow him on Twitter at Hamoloid. Hamoloid. Cassie Wei, I found a little bit more information on. She was born on May 8th, 1993 in China, but she grew up in Canada, and she currently resides in Japan. And you can follow her on Twitter at Momo Cashew, which I love that username. In terms of what they have worked on, they've worked with Rayark quite a bit. If you don't remember who that is, they made Vose, which we talked about in episode 47 of this show, with Mili having done music for their games Quietus and Demo. Though as far as I can tell, I looked into it pretty hard, they did not do any music in Vose. I would have thought that was really cool. That would have been a very cool throwback. But Quietus and Demo are still rare games that are apparently quite good. They also did music for Merc Storia, which was an online game that I've never heard of. A game called World Flipper. Library of Ruina. Then obviously Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Nights. But they've also worked on various animes. They're credited for works on things like Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex and Goblin Slayer. They have 3 studio albums, 1 mini-album, and 3 singles, and Cassie Wei is also credited as a vocalist on the official Nier Automata Arranged and Unreleased Tracks album. And that's pretty much all I could find. So let's get into the Critical 5, I guess. And we're going to start with what is actually probably my favorite area music in the game. The music in this game is very somber in a lot of ways and has a lot of focus on piano and such, which is one of the reasons why I like it so much. And you can kind of hear that tone that the game's going for. In Critical Track number 1, this is Harmonious. This music plays in the second major area of the game, being the cliffside hamlet. This will be the last place I remember the name of. It's very difficult to look stuff up. I could have gone and reinstalled the game and just looked at the map, but I didn't think about that until literally just now. But the cliffside hamlet is a ruined village that's been overrun with monsters that were once its citizens. And like I said, I think this song really, really puts into perspective the sort of tone that the game is going for, with the sort of sad humming along with it, and also eventually it turns into very somber singing. And this song really, really stuck with me when I heard it. It is very pretty, I think, and just the sort of use of somebody, I assume Lily, sort of singing under her breath in what sounds to be like an attempt to keep her spirits up that is obviously not working. I just find that very interesting, and this song hit me pretty well. I like it.
If this sounds familiar to you and you've been a listener of ours, you'll know that this was the track that was highlighted in Best of 2021 for its honorable mention role. And so, yeah, that stuck with me for sure. Listening to this again, I was like, oh yeah, this piece with you get kind of the minor tones with the vocal descending, but then once you transition into the more singing, it's trying to be brighter, but that harp accompaniment is just so nice.
Following that, let's talk about one of the boss themes. Now, all the boss themes have 2 parts. There's intro and outro, which are just the first stage, which is their regular person form, and their second stage, which is now they are a big monster, fight them again. the intros are usually the better versions for me, and this one is no different. This is my second favorite boss theme in the game. It is Bible Intro. I forget this character's name, but this is a fight with a religious figure that has been sworn to protect the White Priestess, but she has been driven mad by the Blight. She's a nun-like character with I think a hammer? One of them has a hammer. She's the sister of the very first boss you fight, and is very similar to that boss. And in fact, her music is very similar as well, but is a lot more intense when it gets in. So at the very beginning, it's a very quiet, sort of low-key, sad piano solo piece. And then eventually it just hits the gas and gets extremely intense and throws in a violin in there. And it just feels really, really cool. And again, really drives home the tone of like, oh yeah, like this is really sad while also being kind of an intense situation. Fight this monster, but be sad about it.
The pickup of the percussion is excellent, and you can totally imagine like that's the start of the battle, like getting serious, maybe like the awakening, or like let's go. Like it really gives you a certain imagery in your mind, but it's amazing how it just dips back down to the somber nature of it. With the harp continues to be so good, and yeah, the violin is a nice touch. I'm sure it's not going to be the last time we hear that instrument that you also enjoy, but wow, the percussion really stands out for the big moment here.
It's such a cool piece. Then we're going to pull it back a little bit more to another area theme. This is critical track number 3, North. As you might surmise from the title, North, this is the music that plays in the northernmost area of the map, which is a big ruined castle where royalty used to live and such. I don't know, I really, really like this one. Mostly because, again, it starts out very, very somber and sad, but this one actually picks up at one point and kind of keeps a little bit of a positive, hopeful, determined vibe to it for a little bit, which you could hear in the clip. But then, of course, dips right back down into somber and low-key and quiet. But I really, really like the sort of transition between the two, because I think by the time you get to that northern area, you've probably gotten pretty strong, and you have gotten quite a few spirits, and you're getting closer to maybe finding a solution. So I think this music helps illustrate Lily's determination to keep going, and I really like that.
Absolutely. You got the piano in this one, so it's nice to hear that instrument being added. You're right, the driving and like with the ascending kind of chords moving up. Yeah, that shows that determination, if you will. And I feel like this is doing a really good job of kind of like, you're kind of setting the groundwork of like where this goes, and like, oh yeah, you can hear that perfectly well, and I really appreciate that.
Now, you mentioned that Bible was probably not the last time we were going to hear violin. What if there was an entire violin piece that is my favorite boss theme in the game? Well, you're in luck, because critical track number 4 is Bloom Intro. This is the boss of the northern area. In my opinion, the hardest regular boss in the game. He killed me so many times. I think he's the only boss where I, had to say, I guess I'll come back to you later. I can't beat you right now. He's a punchy guy that does a lot of punches. And, like I said, you can probably tell immediately why I like this song. It sounds very classic. It is pretty much entirely violin, and it is absolutely gorgeous. And I don't think I've ever heard boss music that has this sort of feeling to it, and this sort of vibe. And I'm not sure why this one specifically has the violin piece, but I'm really glad it does, because it is a gorgeous, really, really cool piece just in general. And again, it makes me wish I could pick up a damn violin.
Since when do you hear a piece that is basically like a violin recital, essentially, with just the solo work going here throughout the whole piece? I mean, that's remarkable, and I think that's, yeah, I can see why it caught your ear, especially with that kind of boss, but you don't come across that too often, especially on a game soundtrack.
Yeah, this song is absolutely fantastic. I think it's my favorite song in the game in general. And lastly, I want to talk about the credits theme of Ender Lilies. That's critical track number 5. This is Bull Bell.
Thought I would be satisfied, seeing you content at the other side. But somehow I thought these crazy thoughts that I deserve to be loved. I deserve to know love. We deserve to live in love. I wish there's no end. I wish there's no end to our time together.
Oh, this is a vocal piece, as you probably heard in the clip. And for some reason that always makes a song stick out when it's the only vocal song on the soundtrack, essentially. It is performed by Mili, which means that those vocals, I believe, as far as I can tell, are Cassie Way. I really like this song because I think it really, really reflects, again, the tone of Ender Lilies, which is, yeah, you made it to the end, but everything still sucks everywhere. Everybody's still dead. Oops. Well, not oops, because you kind of know that's where it's going, but the song and the lyrics kind of really point towards, well, I did my best and it didn't fix anything, and that's unfortunate. I really, really like Cassie Way's performance in this song in general, especially when it starts picking up. And I don't know, this song really, really catches my ear every time I listen through the soundtrack. I think it's fantastic.
I think it falls prey to the issue that we have plenty of times on this show, where a probably Japanese originally written song doesn't get the cleanest or best translation into English, and maybe then the lyrics sound a little stilted because of that. But at the same time, Cassie Way's vocal performance, some of those high-pitched notes to hit those is really impressive, and the performance is good. Just listening to it, though, on a first listen for me, it's just like, maybe it's something with the writing. I don't know.
Maybe. I'm not sure. But I do know that Cassie Way does a very good job at sounding like it is a child singing, because I assume it's supposed to be Lily singing.
Yes.
And I don't know. I don't know if that's just a regular singing voice, but it fits Lily very well, I think. A couple tracks on the cutting room floor. I got 2 other area songs that I want to highlight. The first being the very first area. This song is called Awakening. As you may guess, this is the song that plays in the area where Lily wakes up. The very first area in the game, it is an underground crypt, essentially. Everything is dark, kind of musty, and there are just a few monsters wandering here and there. And this song, again, is a very good tone setter for this is how this game is going to feel, guys. So get used to it.
Yeah, you got the piano recital here now, basically. Although there's also that synth drone kind of going underneath it that kind of gives it a little bit of a grainy texture to it. It's a nice compliment, but yeah, I think a good tone setter for this for sure.
And in a complete change of tone, we have the final area music of the game with the other track on the cutting room floor, Compounding. So the final area of the game is a very difficult area. And lore-wise, it is a place that maybe you really don't want to go because you've read about this place and it sounds like things went poorly there. And they did, it turns out. But this song drives home that the place you are going is scary and, like, off-putting and is not gonna be nice to you. And I think that this song manages to be that while also being kind of off-putting and illustrating that very, very well, especially with the sort of, I don't even know what to call it, the synth
electrical bug noise.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting. I mean, I'm definitely unnerved, and coming off of Metroid Prime Remastered, I'm definitely getting some vibes there for sure. So yeah, it's surprising to hear that kind of instrument mixed in, but what other time to put it in than the end, and it's a scary area.
So I'll never forget about Ender Lilies. I don't know, the atmosphere and the music is really, really, really good. I don't think the story is all that much to write home about, but I think it plays interestingly, and it looks great, and it sounds amazing. And again, if you like Metroidvanias, if you like Hollow Knight, this might be a game to take a look at. It's not, I don't think it is as good as Hollow Knight, I will say that. Which, that's not a detriment to the game. Hollow Knight is a really high bar to clear. But I do think it is up there, and I think it is well worth your time.
I'm glad you brought the soundtrack to the show, because it's a good counterpoint. Definitely a different soundtrack than Destiny 2, but both Guardians nonetheless, with Lily's Knight and your Destiny protagonist. So that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at StringPixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but that's that MP3 podcast version that you want, and that's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's where Joe's other podcast, Smasher Pieces, is hosted, and you can find Smasher Pieces and Original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, even on Spotify, where we have a feed of podcast episodes, but also a video game music playlist. If we talk about a track on the show and it's on Spotify, it gets added to this big monster playlist Joe, what's being added this week?
Both of these games are on Spotify. I assume Destiny, the Destiny 2 stuff you talked about, is on Spotify. There is an album just called Destiny 2. I would hope that is the correct album, but I guess we'll find out.
Well, it's probably it, but we love that. We love getting new music added to that playlist. And when you're done listening, you can find the show on social media at Soundchat OST. Leave some feedback for us. How are we doing with these episodes? Also, give us some suggestions for games to cover in the future. All right, Joe, who are we talking about next week?
Next week, I will be talking about Ayako Toyoda.
And I will be talking about Tadashi Ikegami. All right, Joe, let's play us out.
So there is a main theme of Ender Lilies, and I almost put it somewhere on here because it is very, very good. But it just barely didn't make the cut. So when I found an acoustic guitar cover of it by YouTuber Izan Soria, that's IZAN SORIA, who seems to be somebody that does a lot of covers like this in general, and has done a lot of Ender Lilies covers, like 4 or 5 of them. He did a cover of the main theme of Ender Lilies, and I think it is beautiful and works very well. So please enjoy that.
Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Sound Chat. We'll see you next time. Take care.